During the Taiping Rebellion, Chinese soldiers, under General Gordon, were in the habit of cutting out and devouring the hearts of their dead enemies on the battlefield, like the Maoris and Britons. Mistresses were specially kept by opulent ancient Peruvians to breed sucklings for the table. When these women became too old for childbearing, they were likewise cast into the pot as useless encumbrances. In 1782, more than 40 gypsies were executed in Austria upon a proved charge of cannibalism. The case of the herdsman Goldsmith must not be forgotten, nor the gruesome London legends regarding sausages being manufactured out of dead cats, dead dogs, dead paupers, and murdered sailors. The ancient Scandinavians, Teutons, Scythians, Mongols, Sarmatians, Canaanites, Goths, and Huns were all anthropophagists. Indeed, the detailed facts of how men have tortured each other for pleasure, revenge, or profit would fill 10,000 volumes. No man in his lifetime could read or comprehend all the horrors that have been perpetrated, say, in the Tower of London, the Paris Bastille, the Spanish Inquisition, the Rhine Castle dungeons, by the Bridge of Sighs, the Bosphorus, or in the prison hells of Chicago, Newgate, Mazas, Siberia, Sing Sing, New Caledonia, Botany Bay, or Van Diemen's Land. The cold-blooded cruelty of man to man surpasses anything that poet cranks could conceive of as happening in hell. Cannibalism undoubtedly originated amid overcrowded populations in some prehistoric age. Among moderns, civilized and savage, it merely exists as a survival of social conditions which have long since passed away. At some former era of the world's profoundly mysterious history, men-animals increased in swarming myriads as they are doing now, until at last on the surface of the soil there was scarcely standing room for all. Then the air became laden with the reeking effluvia of their strumous bodies, leprosy poisoning the wells and rivers and transforming Babylons into carnal houses and tombs. The rearing of tame cattle for food in such an environment probably became too expensive and cumbersome. Perhaps even the cattle would also be swept away by some blight or rinderpest. Under such horrible circumstances, survivors might, from necessity, resort to anthropophagy. Gradually, the new habit would grow upon them and become a settled custom. The segmental fragments of prehistoric civilizations are the cannibal savages of today, the savages that we are displacing, pushing aside in order that we may enslave them, and repeat over again the same weary old round of growth, power, and decay. Shiploads of dead soldiers dug out of old battlefields possess a regular commercial value. They are imported into England to be chemically treated and manufactured into fertilizers for enriching exhausted wheat fields. Human hair commands a steady sale, and cadavers may be bought for dissection in any great city for $1 COD. The tanning of human skins for glove making and bookbinding, Moudon, is an old established industry. The transfusion of blood from animals into human veins and from healthy humans into unhealthy ones for a price is regularly practiced by medical men. The grafting of flesh, bone, and skin has also been successfully performed. American sheriffs and detectives hunt down tramps and criminals with specially trained bloodhounds, just as Russians hunt wolves and sheep farmers hunt coyotes and dingoes. It is no wise unusual for Negroes to be first captured, then chained to a stake, flayed alive, soaked in kerosene, and burnt to death amid exultant shrieks of corybantic delight. Roman senators fattened their lampreys and eels upon the drowned bodies of old worn-out slaves, and patrician maids and matrons, with uplifted thumb, sent many a gladiator to kingdom come. For innate cruelty of deed, no animal can surpass woman. In Mohammedan Europe, boys are unsexed by the lancet, that they may thereafter be more safely employed as harem attendants, and in Christian Europe, eunuchs are made and trained and priced to sing the praise of a risen Christ. Young girls are nightly bought and sold for currency like horses and hogs, at the street corners and upon the profits of licensed polyandry. Pillars of the church become millionaires. Even the salaries of fulminating evangelists are paid out of Rahab's rent. Baths of human blood are not unknown to students of history, and Jack the Ripper, with his letters, written in harlots' blood, enclosing pieces of fried woman's liver to the London chief of police, is certainly not a fabulous ancient legend. Is this the record of a breed of dearly beloved brethren? What hollow mockery these holy phrases are, to be sure. The brotherhood of man. Ha ha! The brotherhood of devils, rather. Allegorically speaking, the clothes we wear, the houses we live in, the food we eat, the books we read have been carved, by force, out of other men's bones and flesh. Literally, they are the hides, sinews, flesh, pulp, and outer woolen covering of captive animals, transmuted by human slavery into garments, lumber, implements, thoughts, shoes, and daily dinners. Indeed, man's tusks are against all other animate beings whatsoever, and in turn their fangs are against him. So it goes on and on and on, as merrily as marriage bells. Via victus, and behold, it is good. This world is no nirvana, where peaceful pleasure flows. It is a gruesome butcher shop, where slain men hang in rows. 6. From the scientific point of view, it is but a single step from the eating of captive cattle, horses, sheep, hares, rabbits, deer, hogs, etc., to the eating of captive men. It may grate upon unstrung nerves to be harshly told these gruesome facts in straight language. However, calm, sensible readers must unreservedly admit that man is not a pretty, harmless little cherub, not even a lamb, but the fiercest of all the vertebrates. He is the fighting, roving, pillaging, lusting, cannibalistic animal par excellence, the king of the great carnivore. When he takes his walks abroad, the wild beasts of the field and the birds of the air, even the most courageous of them, are stricken dumb. Shuddering, they fly from his shadow or his odor down the wind, hiding and trembling and quaking with terror. It is man's destructive energy, not his altruism, that makes him absolute monarch of all he surveys. And yet, how feeble he is if compared to the powers of nature that gave him being. No other beast will stand and face him, except it cannot run away, not even a snake, a tiger, or a wolf. Structurally, men are fashioned for purposes of inflicting and suffering pain. Every human anatomy is an elaborate nerve and bone infernal machine, a kind of breathing, perambulating juggernaut, a superb engine of lethal immolation that automatically stokes its furnace fires with its victims. Men rush upon each other or upon their prey with hoarse war shouts and bloodshot eyes, as prowling beasts of the deserts and jungles do. Man banquets upon his quarry with greediness, snarling and growling with ferocious triumphant delight, just like unto wolves. But he loves to act the hypocrite, turn up the whites of his protesting eyes to heaven, weep crocodile tears over his mangled, bleeding, and palpitating carrion. How exultantly he lilts his Te Deum, his Kyrie eleison, his Et in terra pax, his glorias, and his alleluias, while with blood-clotted jaw and distended paunch he licks his gaping wounds. As the painted redskin chants his vengeful ghost song, so the furious paleface whoops his double-leaded editorial. As the hungry lion roars at midnight to African Karoo or in Himalayan jungle, so the piratical Anglo-Teuton roars his battle hymn of the Republic, his Britannia rules the waves, or his Watch by the Rhine. Exactly as the Muslim fanatic yells Allah Akbar while slicing up hated Christian dogs, so the vicious Englishman thunders forth his hip hip hurrah while driving an elegant bayonet dagger into the liver of wicked heathens, whose property he thereafter annexes, as a matter of course. For business is business, don't you know? Man's anatomy, external and internal, his eyes, his teeth, his muscles, his blood, his viscera, his brain, his vertebra, all speak of fighting, passion, aggressiveness, violence, and prideful egoism. Even the component elements of a human body are themselves in a constant state of internecine warfare. Our bony framework and pulsating tissues are vast campaigning grounds, wherein microscopical animal maculae in countless myriads fight out their ephemeral lives as we ourselves do, with tooth and claw. When one swarm of microbes, germs, or spores conquer, in the struggle for sustenance, disease or death supervenes to us, as the case may be, When rival hosts vanquish, then our flesh, nerves, bones, and blood become their happy hunting grounds, and our health returns, at least until the bacilli battalions have finally eaten us out, or they have been themselves conquered and exterminated by fiercer swarms. It is not improbable that this earth itself is a living, breathing organism, and that the tribes of man are microbes and blood-sucking vermin on its outer cuticle, imagining themselves the whole thing. Just as itch-creating parasites burrow into our own hide, so in our turn we may be unpleasant parasites burrowing in the hide of some nobler and grander being. 7. From youth to hoary age, man takes an instinctive delight in all that pertains to warfare and the chase. As a boy he twangs his arrows at the sparrows, trains and loads his toy cannon, marshals his tin soldiers, brandishes his wooden sword, fights his mimic battles, builds his snow fortifications on the playground, and the proudest day of his life is that on which he becomes the proprietor of a real gun. As a full-grown citizen, he practices homicide with repeating rifle at moving targets, slaughters tame pigeons with choke-bore breech-loaders, hunts foxes, wolves, bears, pumas over mountain and mere, wades up to his neck in swamps to kill teal, and travels to far lands in search of big game and nigger shooting. The Indian fighters of North America take supreme joyance in slaying red devils, and to pot a blackfellow in Queensland is boasted of round campfires under gum trees as great fun. The Cape of Good Hope, Australia, New Zealand, North and South America have been made into veritable human shambles and gory hunting grounds within the memory of middle-aged men. Indeed, the delight which men take in slaying wild animals is tameness itself compared with the exultation they display in hunting, trailing, and slaughtering each other. Manhunts were organized systematically in Lacedaemon when the helots became too numerous and too restive. It is not improbable that as our own surplus submerged tents increase in numbers, they may be thinned out by similar battues. At every meal we rend flesh, scrape bones, suck marrow, and daintily lap blood, just as our hairy troglodyte progenitors did. The food supply of all Christian nations is composed of the body and blood, the hides and marrow of both human herds and vast swarms of inferior brutes, living, dying, dead. The lives of countless hordes of hirelings are daily being transmuted into juicy steaks and sirloins, that those who have money may buy and eat thereof. Not only do we ferociously compete for prey, in example, for subsistence, but we literally eat each other with voracity, relish, and mutual toleration. Thus, properly understood, Darwinism is no very comforting doctrine for fat men. Public buildings and frowning fortresses, capitals and prisons, temples of freedom, and cross-crowned cathedrals have, every one of them, been constructed upon exactly the same general principles whereby the pyramids of On and the palaces of Nineveh were built. Every riveted girder, every iron transom, every block of concrete, every solid squared and polished stone has been bedded literally in a dying groan by the hands of dehumanized and conquered decadence, insensate, of reason void, of reverence full. There is nothing immoral, nothing abnormal in these grim facts. All is in strict harmony with that cosmic enactment, the survival of the strongest. In the proud language of Germany's Chansonist, the living current through the air is heaving, breathing blessings, see them bending, balanced worlds, from change defending, while everywhere diffused is harmony unending. Instinctively we understand that the struggle for existence is absolutely needful. We feel that nature makes no mistakes, and therefore we accept her dicta because we must, not because it has been eloquently formulated by sublimated visionaries or re-echoed again and again by thousands of human microphones. 8. When not thwarted by artificial contrivances, whatever argument nature promulgates is right. The further man gets away from nature, the further he departs from right. To be right is to be natural, and to be natural is to be right. The sun shines, therefore it is right that it should shine. The rain falls, therefore it is right that it should fall. The tides ebb and flow, therefore it is right that they should ebb and flow. Darwin's law exists, may be seen in operation, is practicable, of daily demonstration, therefore it also is right. It is not a dream like a religion, it is not an invention like morals, it is not an assumption like God. It is a cosmic fact, like the sunshine, the rain, and the tides. Nature does not set up idols, does not found superstitions, does not invent decalogues. These toys and fetters have been constructed by man for his own infinite damnation. Neither morals, laws, nor creeds are first principles, but they may, probably, have their uses, just as guillotines and gardeners' hoes have their uses. They may be convenient engines for the deletion of lower organisms, for extirpating individuals of infantile intellect. Indeed, the secret object of all superstitions possibly is to provide an ultra-rational sanction for fraudulent standards of right and wrong. To base a lie upon a myth is certainly much safer than to base it on a reality, for you cannot run a tape measure over a myth. Christliness, as social quietism, has never been accepted by men of supereminent strength, courage, and wisdom. Such men have everywhere regarded the Christ ideal as a model for slavish souls only, to be humored for strategic purposes, but never practiced by masters, conquerors, kings. Don't do as I do, but do as I say, has ever been the dictum of high priests and rulers to docile multitudes. The evolution of sovereignty satisfactorily exhibits this ethical dictatorship as an historical commonplace. Moral codes, always and everywhere imposed upon the common people by immoral combinations of cumulative craft, are never obeyed by ruling castes. 9. If the masters of Christendom are to be judged by moral codes, by the common law, or by gospel injunctions, there is not one moral individual among them. Measured by religio-ethical dogmas, they are one and all an amalgamated mafia of blackmailers, confidence men, thieves, murderers, and infidels. As far as the codes are concerned, honesty must undoubtedly be searched for among the dregs of society rather than among the elite. But it is essentially unjust to measure the conquerors of mankind by fallacious, Christly standards. Christ, together with his moral measuring rod, is their subordinate agent, an effective instrument of state. Indeed, moral principles are one of the tricks in the game of dog-eat-dog all are playing. They are effectively narcotized out of the deal who fancy themselves safe in the arms of Jesus. Never yet has there been a Christian king, a Christian president, a Christian Congress, nor a Christian synod. Of course, many prominent celebrities have professed Christianism, for example, Judas Iscariot, St. Peter, Torquemada, Cromwell, Abraham Lincoln, Napoleon, Gladstone, and Jabez Spencer Balfour, but only mind's paralytic judge of men by professions, Christian and ruler are direct contradiction. The ridiculous ineffectuality of all gospel theories shows that they were only invented as campaign lies. Christ explicitly condemns the use of force, and yet all existent nations, without exception, were founded by unlimited throat-cutting and piracy. The rulers of the world, the directors of concentrated power, are not now and never have been sad-eyed saviors, mournful, immaculate tramp gods, but masters of majestic violence. To use the language of Isaiah, not only Zion, but every nation on earth has been built with blood. Nations cannot be built otherwise. The Romans first appear in history as a gang of banditti. The English as a nest of pirates. The Germans as a horde of roving freebooters. The Russians as a band of mounted horse thieves. The Americans as pious anarchists and nigger stealers. The Australians as exiled cut-pursers. The Turks as Bedouin brigands. Everywhere symbols of kingship, tribal totems, and insignia of state speak of violence, defiance, and war. The fasces carried before a Roman praetor consisted of an axe for chopping necks and a bundle of rods for whipping backs. The mace of the English parliamentary organization, of which the American system is an imitative offshoot, that bauble of Cromwell. Also, all royal scepters are but carved and gilded clubs. Originally, both mace and scepter were in daily use for breaking recalcitrant skulls. They are still emblematic of legislative authority and offensive violence, as much so indeed as the knotted bludgeon, the barbed lance, or the green stone skull plitter of an orthodox cannibal chief. National crests are selected not as a rule from doves, lambs, goats, magpies, and hares, but from lions, tigers, she-wolves, serpents, dragons, bears, eagles, and the fighting man. In the centers of our highest civilization, force is recognized as the underlying principle of authority. Between nation and nation, it is in constant requisition as the basis of all diplomacy, and between contending factions within the nation, it is often effectively applied. The policeman's loaded truncheon, the hussar's slicing saber, and the artillery company's field piece are still the ultimo ration of order, liberty, peace. The Maxim gun is a development and a decided improvement upon the old-time bludgeon, especially when dealing with rabid revolutionary masses. One of those beautiful engines and half a dozen trained men, if supplied with plenty of ammunition, could wipe out in half a day the largest mob of would-be insurgents that London, Paris, and Chicago ever saw. We have found in most cases that one regiment of regular infantry is quite capable of managing the biggest and wildest mob, writes millionaire editor Colsatt, Chicago Times-Herald, 13/11/1896. When citizens disobey legal regulations, they are generally interviewed at first by a blue-coated guardian of the peace, with an official warrant and a vanished club, who tamely leads them away to a state dungeon or indicts them before a state inquisitor. Behind the armed police and the suave judge stand in threatening array the whole military and naval forces of government and law. Law, courts, and thrones are, de facto, built upon bayonets. Likewise, all statutes, constitutions, and moral codes are written by the sword. Material strength is now, and ever has been, and ever must be, the true basis upon which all political institutions rest. No other foundation is feasible. What the sword has established, the sword must defend. Symbolic thereof, every emperor and president, every sultan, king, shah, or savage chief is proclaimed before drilled legions and raucous multitudes, amid the fanfare of battle trumpets, the unsheathing of battle sword, and the thundering roar of battle cannon. Two examples from two continents, from two different systems of government, may be quoted as sufficient proof of this. Sir Edwin Arnold describes the recent coronation of the Emperor of Russia, an hereditary absolute monarch. Behind and between the royal chairs stood the new commander of the silver-eagled regiment, his saber bared and gleaming. When cannon volleys booming across two continents, from Riga to Vladivostok, announced the final crowning of the suzerain, 2 million Sclavonian warriors bared their heads in acknowledgment, clanged their weapons in token of pride, and swore eternal allegiance. Governor John R. Tanner of Illinois, mounted on a black horse, and wearing a broad-rimmed felt hat with gold braid and tassel, also cavalry saber, will ride down Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, at the head of the 1st Regiment. National Guards in the President's inaugural. Crack Illinois soldiery marching. Next, the President's personal escort, Troop A, 8th Infantry, along with the regiment, will go the gun corps and the Gatling guns that did service during the Debs insurrection. The President of these United States, an elective monarch, is a commander-in-chief of the federal armed forces and possesses more administrative authority than any Asiatic despot. Every military and naval officer in England receives his commission direct from the Queen. Until recently, it was customary at coronation ceremonials for an hereditary champion, armed capopai, to ride out into the courtyard and there before assembled commoners, knights, nobles, generals, officially challenge to personal encounter anyone who dared to even question the royal titles. European land title deeds may be, in every instance, traced back to military and kingly power. In all the English colonies, wastelands are occupied and cleared under crown grants. The same principle prevails in this republic and among all savage tribes. 10. By force, all things that exist are evolved, maintained, and perpetuated. Force aggregates and separates the atoms that go to make up this cosmic universe of mind and matter. It integrates them into forms, organic and inorganic. It disintegrates them again and again. It builds up and pulls down without the slightest respect to man's wishes or desires. It theorizes, creates, constructs, annihilates, attacks, and repels. It is literally in all, through all, and over all. Even the undulatory migration of races that now proceeds over sea and continent in great animalistic waves, as it did in the days of Akbar and Tamerlane, is also the vibrations of force acting through human media. It is the incarnate pulsations of power.